Hi guys, in the last video we have learned how to send cookies from server, and in this video I will show you how to manage that cookies in our frontend. So after user enters the detail from the login form and click on login, we have to store the data received from server inside our local storage. So local storage is a storage which allows the websites to store user information. So just click on right button in your mouse and click on this inspect. After that you can you have to click on this option more tabs. After that you have to select this application, and then inside the storage section we can see there is an option called local storage. So inside this local storage we have to store the message received from server after user logged in. So let me open this. So this is our port number 5173, which is our front end, right? So I have, as you can see, our front end is running in this port number and our back end is running in this port number. So that's why we are seeing that port number 5173 here. So as you can see, after clicking on it, our local storage is opened. So inside this local storage, as you can see, we don't have any data inside this key section and the value section. So, but after user logged in, we have to send a key value inside this local storage. As you can see, if I type my details in the login form, let me enter my password. So if I click on login, as you can see, we are not getting any values inside here. But we have to store the information received from server inside this local storage. So for that, so this is our login component, right? So once user successfully login, he will go to this code. He will go to this code and then send a custom pop-up message with toast message with message login successful. So here, so we have to select local storage, and inside this local storage we have a function called set item. So this set item is used to sets the value of the pair identified by key to value, as you can see here. Though, so the first parameter will be a key and the second parameter is the value for that key. So inside this whatever we have entered here, that will be come inside this key section. So inside this key I'm going to give the name as current user. You can give anything you want. I am giving it as current user, and then second parameter will be a value for this current user key. So I'm going to give a value for this current user which is received from which is which is the response received from server. So after user clicks on this login button from this login page, user will be, so we are going to call this backend API endpoint which is forward slash login check. So inside this we are checking the mail and password is correct or not. If correct, it will go inside this code. So inside this, as you can see, we are returning a response from server with this message user logged in. So we are going to send this inside the local storage. So whatever response received from the server, we are storing that inside our response variable. As you can see, first we are calling the API and we are storing that API calling inside this call API variable, and then we are storing the whatever response received from this API, we are storing that inside this response variable, as you can see. So we are going to give the value that is received from the server. So inside this, we have to use this JSON.stringify. I will tell you why we have to write this. So inside this, just pass this response variable, which is storing the response received from the server. So as you can see, inside our login check API endpoint, we are returning a response with object. As you can see here, the object key is message and the value is user logged in, right? So everything stored inside this local storage should must be a string. So but we are returning a response with an object from the server, right? So we have to convert this object into a string. So to convert the object into a string, we can use this method called json.stringify. So we are calling that function, and inside this we are passing the response, which is response received from the server. So now whatever response received from the server, that will be converted into a string, and then we are storing that inside this local storage with key current user. So now if I try to log in, let me refresh it. So as you can see here, there is no values, right? But after user enters their email and then enters their password, and then if I click on login, as you can see, we are getting values as current user and then message user login. So the key is coming from here, as you can see, because we are setting the key name as current user, and then value is this. This is coming from server, as you can see here. Message user logged in. That's what we are seeing here, right? Here, as you can see, this is a JSON string. We are giving the message without inverted commas, right? But in our local storage, it is coming with this inverted commas because this is a JSON string. So the JSON strings are inside this inverted commas. That's why we are seeing that in our local storage. So now we are going to store this value inside a state variable. So for that, I'm going to create a folder inside our server, not server folder, inside our client folder. I'm going to create a folder with name auth context. So inside this auth context, I'm going to create a file name as auth context.jsx. So inside this, I'm going to create a variable with name auth context. I will tell you why I'm using this auth context. So for now, just focus on it. Focus on this topic. Create context. We have to use this. So we are creating a context with this create context function, and then we are storing this auth context. So this create context will return an object with values provider and consumer. So inside the provider, we are going to store this value inside a state variable. So we are creating this, and then we have to use a function. I'm going to name it as, what do I have to name this as? I'm going to name it as use auth context. You can give whatever you want. So this use auth context will be our custom hook. So inside this, we are going to return this auth context by using use context, and then inside this we have to pass this auth context because we are storing our create context function inside this auth context variable. That's why we have to give that here. So now we're getting an error here. I think we have to ex- give the export here. So now we will not get any error. So we are exporting this so that we can use this function inside any file from our folders. So now after that, I'm going to create another function with name auth context provider. You can give any name you want. So, and this will be an arrow function. So this auth context provider will take a single prop. So inside this, I'm going to name the prop as children. You can give anything you want. I will explain you whatever I am writing here. Just wait. So after that, inside this, I'm going to create a variable with name authenticated user. So this will be our state variable, and then I'm going to create a function to update this state variable set authenticated user. So I'm going to use state. So after selecting on this, as you can see, everything is imported automatically by VS Code. So inside this, I have to give a value for this authenticated user variable. So inside this, I'm going to use a method called json.parse. So This JSON.parse function is used to convert the string into an object. So inside this, I'm going to call the local storage and then get item. And inside this, we have to pass our key, which is current user, right? So we have given. Let me close these files. So here we have given set item current user, set item with key current user, and then we are retrieving this key here. So the value of the authenticated user will be the value of this current user key. So inside this, either we have to, so initially the value of this current user is null, right? Because if user does not log in, the value of the authenticated user will be empty. If login, whatever response we have received from the server, that value will be assigned to this authenticated user variable. So inside this, if there is no value here, we are going to set the value as null. If there is any value for this current user key, that value will be stored inside our authenticated user variable. So if there is no value for this current user key, the value of this authenticated user will be null. So after that, we are going to return. So we have to use this authcontext.provider component. So inside this will take a attribute which is value. So inside this we have to pass this authenticated user as well as our set authenticated user function. So as you can see here, we are providing two curly braces because the first curly braces is used to. So whenever we write JSX expressions, we have to enclose those inside our curly braces, right? And then you can see we're again writing curly braces. So this because of this authenticated user is an object, right? Because we are converting the string which is received from the local storage to an object by using this JSON.parse function, right? So since we are passing an object, we have to write another curly braces, and inside that we are passing this authenticated user state variable and then set authenticated user function. And inside this, we are going to write the children. So I will explain you why I am writing this. So after that, so our root component is app.jsx component, right? But this app.jsx is rendered inside our main.jsx. As you can see, inside our main.jsx, our app.jsx is there. So we have to wrap our app component with auth context provider. So let me close this, paste it, cut it, and paste it here. So now our app component can able to retrieve all the values which are provided this auth context provider. So our auth context provider is providing this authenticated user variable value and then this set authenticated user function, right? Here as you can see. So these children references to all the childrens which are inside our app component, which are these components. So now the value of this authenticated user can be accessible to all the components. So now after that we have to use this authenticated inside our app.jsx. So here we have to import our authenticated user variable. So this authenticated user variable is inside our auth context provider, right? And then this auth context provider is returning by this use context of auth context, right? So we have to give this use auth context hook because the value of this authenticated user is stored inside our use auth context hook because we are returning the auth context inside this use auth context hook, right? And then we are using this auth context provider, and then inside the auth context provider we are providing this authenticated user variable. So inside this we have to use auth context. So as you can see, after clicking on it, you can see the use auth context is imported from this auth context. So let me open this. So after clicking on logout, and then if user clicks on this text, we have to redirect the user to login page, right? Because user already logged in before. So after clicking on this already have an account login text, user will be redirected. This is register component, right? So let me open the register component. So inside this, after user clicks on this text, we are redirecting user to slash login root, right? So this slash login root is here. So inside this element, we have to give this authenticated user variable. So if the user is authenticated, we are going to render home page. If user is not authenticated, we are going to render the login component. So this is ternary operator. I think you guys know about this. So it is the short way to write if else conditions. So if the user is authenticated, we are going to redirect the user to home page. If not, we are going to redirect the user to login page. So now I think it will work. So if I click on this, as you can see, we are automatically getting redirected to home page. But we have a small problem here. So if I click on this logout and again click on this, it is again redirecting us to home page. But if user manually clicks on this logout, we have to remove the cookie, and then if I user again clicks on this, we have to render login component. So for that, after user click on this logout, we have to remove the cookie. Since we have to manage with cookie, we have to, which is a backend operation, right? So we have to go inside our server folder. So inside this, we are going to create another root for managing our logout button. So inside this, I'm going to give the root name as logout, and then it will take an arrow function with first comma response parameters. Inside this, I'm going to write try catch block, try, and then there is any errors from the try block, we are going to catch that errors and then control the error as well as return a response to the user with status code 500 internal server, and then inside this we're going to give the key name as error and then give the value as internal server error. So after user clicks on this login logout button, we are going to call this API endpoint. So this is a homepage component, right? So I have to go inside our homepage component, which is here. So after user clicks on this logout button, we are calling this logout function. So I have to remove this from here and paste it here. So inside this logout, let me copy this code here. We are going to copy this code and then paste it inside our homepage.js. Since we are using await, we have to make this function as asynchronous. So now inside this we have to change this root to logout, right? Because we have given the root name as logout here. So now if user clicks on this logout, we're going to call this API endpoint. Inside this API endpoint, we have to make the cookie, we have to use this response.cookie function, and then inside we have named our cookie as JWT, right? Here, JW, where is that? Here, JWT. So I have to give that here, and then the second parameter is token, which is a random token generated from the jwt.sign function. So I have to make that to an empty, and then we have to set the max age as 0. So whenever user clicks on the logout button, we are going to remove the cookie by using this max age function to be 0 and then token value to be an empty. So after that, let's go to our homepage component. So after user clicks on this logout button, we also have to call this function which is set authenticated user, which is inside our auth context provider. So how to call this use auth context hook inside our homepage component. So first of all, let's import that set authenticated user function from here. Let me copy this and then paste it inside our homepage component. Since this set authenticated user is inside our use auth context component, use auth context hooks, we have to call that. So as you can see, after clicking on use auth context, VS Code automatically import that use auth context. So now if we don't receive any error from the server, we're going to make we're going to call this set authenticated as a function, and we're going to make the value as false, and then we also have to call this local storage, and then remove we have to use this remove item function in order to remove our local storage key. So let me open the local storage. So here as you can see, the value of the key is current user, right? So after user clicks on this logout button, we have to remove this from our local storage. Remove item and then pass the key which is current user. So also have to cut this from here and paste it here. So if there is no error, we have to redirect the user to this root. So when the root is this empty, we are going to, you can see here, if the root is empty, we are going to render the register component to the user. Now let's check whether it is working or not. So if I click on this, it is automatically redirecting us to home page. So if I click on this logout, uh, the cookie, the local storage is not removing. So I think we have made mistakes, some errors. Let me close all components and then open this. So authenticated user null server.js. Okay guys, here we have to return a response with status code 200, which means okay, and then give the message as logged out. Now I think it will work. So if I click on logout, as you can see, the local storage data is removed from our local storage, as well as were redirected to register component. So now if I click on this text, as you can see, it is again asking us to log. It is again asking us to enter our login details. So now if I enter my details, then password. So if I click on login, we are getting redirected to homepage. So if I close this tab and then visit our front end, and then if I click on this, You can see it is redirecting us to home page because we have not removed the cookie. Since the cookie is not removed, the value of this is that .jsx. So the value of this authenticated user is not null. Since the authenticated user value is not null, which means true, we are going to redirect the user to home page. But if user clicks on this logout button, we are going to let me open the home page component. So if user clicks on this logout component, you can see we are going to set the value of the authenticated user to be null. So after that, since after clicking on logout button, we are making the value of this authenticated user to null. So null means false, right? Since authenticated user is false, we are going to redirect this login component. That's why if I click on this now, you can see it is redirecting us to login page instead of home page. So now let me explain it completely what happened inside. So this is login component, right? Let me open that login component. So let me enter my details and password. So if I click on this login button, it will call this API endpoint, right? After that, inside our login check route, we are checking the mail and password are correct and matched in our database or not. If matched, we are going to call this create cookie function. So that create cookie function is returning a cookie with with key JWT and the token which is received from this JW.sign function. So let me close this server so that you can hear it clearly. So as you can see in the console, we are getting these three messages. But if I click on this login button, you can see we are getting redirected to home page, and then a token is generated from the jw.sign function. So now we have a session with this JWT token. This JWT token will not expire for 15 days as you can see, but it will expire instantly if user clicks on this logout. So now login component. So inside this, we are checking whether any error or not. If there is no any error, we are sending this login successful message, and then we are in the local storage. We are creating a key with this current user, and then converting the response received from this error, which is an object, and then we are converting that object to a string by using this JSON.stringify function. As you can see here, if I open the local storage, we are getting this current user. So now the value of the authenticated user is this, so which means true. So let me open this. What is that? This. So let me console the value of the authenticated user. Not here. Console.log authenticated user. Let me refresh all. So if I open console, as you can see, the value of the authenticated user is this message. Since we are getting this message in the response, we are also having a cookie, but it will not be visible to the user. So if I click on this logout button, we can see the value of the authenticated user is null now. Since it is null, if I click on this, it is asking us to enter our login details again because the value of the authenticated user value is null. So if the authenticated user value is null, which means false, since it is false, we are asking the user to enter their login details again from this login page. So if you don't understand this video, please leave a comment guys so that I will try to explain it again. And that's it for this video, guys. Thank you so much for watching.